Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the yet another milestone, which means we're going big and getting even more weird edition. Today is episode 180, the oldest piece of skin found so far, and nearly 24 overmassive black holes discovered. My friends, my exquisite business geese, take a look at that number. Yes. It's happened. You, me, together, we've reached the plumpiest, roundiest landmark. That is 180 episodes, which means a few things. One, round of goddamn applause to you. I mean, geez, thank you. Thank you for telling your friends, family, complete strangers, that asshole neighbor across the street about this show and all the horrifying, gorgeous, cataclysmic, frenzied, embedded things you've learned, seen, and can't unsee. Thank you. And two, not only have we made it to 180, but on the day that I'm writing the notes for this episode, January 19th, WTI has blown past 1,000 Spotify subscribers, which means, thanks to word of mouth from your beautiful mouth, and by rating, commenting on, and sharing episodes, the flock has grown to intimidating proportions. And if I do some clickety-clack calculations, I think we'll be taking over the world in a few months, so get ready. And three, like I said, we are going big and getting weird, or weirder for this episode, so hold on to your epidermis. In the first half of the show, we are heading to the heartland of America, down into the bowels of a cave, and back 289 million years. Why? Well, because it was here a very special creature died. And thanks to the very special environment it died in, researchers were able to discover a very special segment of skin. Now, it may only be the size of a fingernail, but its significance is gargantuan as a piece that helps further complete the evolutionary puzzle of us land-dwelling creatures. Now, what this skin looks like, where exactly it was found, and who it may have come from shall all be revealed. Then after the break, hold on to all of your holes. Do you recall just 2 weeks ago in episode 178, we talked about how there's more than one way to make a black hole? UHZ1 is a black hole that was formed from a cloud. Yes, a massive, all caps, massive cloud that collapsed in on itself just after the birth of our universe. Priyamvada Natarajan, an astronomer at Yale, and her colleagues made the discovery, and they called it an overmassive black hole galaxy, or OBG, as they like to call it, or notorious OBG, as I like to call it. These types of black holes are way too large for the galaxy they host. The proportions of black hole to galaxy are insane and beyond the standard of what we see in the more recent universe. We will get to it. At the time of the discovery, UHZ1 was the only overmassive black hole known. But that has changed quickly. Thanks to the powerful eye of the James Webb Telescope, turns out there's a bunch of these things. About 24 overmassive black holes have been spotted already. So many holes, so little time, and we will get to them and how their existence is helping us understand the evolution of black holes. No big deal. In the meantime, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my appropriately sized business goose. To begin, my friends, I ask you, have you ever thought about where our modern-day skin comes from? No, neither have I. In fact, at face value, no pun intended, the question feels weird to ask, even a little creepy. But, of course, a question that is weird and possibly even incriminating to one person is brilliant to another. It's a valid question deserving of answers. And those types of folks just happen to be paleontologists and forensic analysts. Bill May, a retired forensic analyst, for example, Robert Rees, a paleontologist at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, Ethan Mooney, a master's student who worked with Rees on the paper we're about to dive into, and T. Maho, a PhD student and another author of that paper. These folks, my friends, they cannot get enough when it comes to skin. Now, here's what I mean. Okay, hold on. When you think about a natural history museum, what comes to mind? Bones, mostly, right? Skeletons of extinct giants standing tall in grand halls, dusty dioramas capturing a scene from hundreds to millions of years ago. But if you stop and think about it, you rarely, if ever, see the actual skin of a creature. And that's no coincidence. Skin is an artifact that is oh so hard to find. When an animal dies, especially one from 300 million years ago, odds are that body would have been scavenged, and whatever hadn't become breakfast rots away, leaving only teeth and bone, or the fossils we're all familiar with. For something as rare as fossilized skin to be found, you're going to need a very unique environment, like the permafrost in northern Siberia, or a limestone cave system in southwestern Oklahoma. Yes, you heard me right, southwestern Oklahoma. So please, join me, will you, inside the 289 million year old recesses of a cave in Richards Spur, Oklahoma, where it turns out not only is the corn as high as an elephant's eye, but so are the remains of creatures called amniotes. Now, if you have no idea what in the holy hell I'm talking about, that was a reference to the musical Oklahoma, and amniotes were lizard-like creatures who were some of the first to live their entire lives on dry land. These are the heroes who gave the ocean the old Irish exit and transitioned from having an amphibian-type skin to a fully terrestrial skin with tough outer scales. So why would they do such a thing? As Anthony Mooney explained to Smithsonian Magazine, quote, "The major role of thickened skin is to not only act as a protective barrier, but also to prevent critical water loss. Scaly skin, just like eggs contained by a shell, were ways early amniotes kept moisture inside as they ventured further and further into the terrestrial realm." End quote. So needless to say, staying moisturized is hella important, and amniotes are hella important when it comes to understanding the evolution of skin and its origins. And the cave system of Richards Spur is the perfect place to score some nearly impossible skin samples. About 289 to 286 million years ago, when an unfortunate amniote fell into and became trapped in these caves, their bodies were welcomed with low oxygen levels. The cave's fine clay sediments rapidly buried their body, and then get this, quote, "When the remains of prehistoric animals became buried in the Richards Spur cave, hydrocarbons seeped out of the cave's stone to combine with sediment to create what Mooney calls exquisite fossils. That oil from the cave's stone came from the transformed remains of even older fossil organisms that lived in the seas about 330 million years ago. These organic remains essentially turned into petroleum and then interacted with the skin and bones of the animals buried in the cave and preserved the skin in three-dimensional detail." End quote. Yes, from Riley Black of Smithsonian Magazine. My friends, this magical layering of goodness led to one hell of a discovery that began in 2018, when Bill May, that retired forensic analyst, well, Bill just couldn't quit being a forensic analyst, and he found himself coming back to Richards Spur again and again. And I don't know how in the holy hell, but Bill found scant fossils only a fingernail in length. But despite their size, even with the naked eye, they looked different. These bits were no bones. So please, stop whatever it is you're doing. Take your hands off the wheel, drop your child, and pick up your phone. head on over to our social media stuffs and tap on today's post. I'd like you to swipe through until you come to a photo of Bill May's bits. I'm talking about the fossils. Okay, now, if you're thinking, damn, these look a lot like the skin of a reptile. If you're thinking that, you are not too far off. In fact, that's exactly what Bill thought. With these fossils in hand, Bill booked it over to Robert Rees, a paleontologist over at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. And when Bill and Bob took a closer look, quote, "We got very excited by what we saw under the microscope," Robert Rees said to the New York Times. A wild team of nerdy paleontologists quickly converged upon these samples, and their study began with PhD student T. Mayho using a diamond-tipped blade to separate tiny portions of the skin into hair-thin layers. Now, my diamond-tipped business goose, I'm going to need you to hold on to your cheeks. What did they find? Drumroll, please. Thank you. Turns out the outermost layers of the samples had hardened structures made of keratin. Yes, that's the protein found in the hair and nails of mammals like you and me. And wait, it gets better. According to Riley Black of the Smithsonian, when the researchers used CT scans to dig a little deeper and to look at the details inside the skin, quote, they found that the internal structure was that of modern crocodiles and was also suited to the side-to-side lizard-like walking motions that researchers expect of early amniotes. End quote. I know. And crazily of all, my upright business goose, this skin dated back to around 288 million years ago, and a staggering 130 million years older than the previous record holder of the oldest piece of skin found so far. 130 million years older. So, my soft friends, our skin has a history that goes back to a time that's older than we could ever have imagined. And thanks to this sample, we have to prepare ourselves. This discovery means the origin of skin probably is even older than this. Quote, while the skin from Richard Spur is now the oldest of its kind yet known, the evolution of scaly skin must have happened earlier. Other fossils will tell us about the timing of this evolutionary step, but the new study is fundamentally important for the diversification of skin types. The fossils are a kind of milepost for when amniotes were settling in on land and establishing the foundational traits of later creatures like fuzzy mammals and feathery dinosaurs. End quote. Paleontologist Frederick Spindler, who was not involved in the study, told Riley Black of Smithsonian. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And you may be thinking, okay, who does this skin belong to anyway? And who can we thank in part for our precious skin today? Well, I'm glad you asked. This fossil may have come from a lizard-like reptile called Captorhinus agouti, which, prepare yourself, it only grew to 12 inches in length. Yes, I know, and its head alone was only like 2 or 3 inches. I know, shh, I know, I know. According to Ye Olde Britannica, Captorhinus was one of the earliest and most primitive species of reptiles, a group with nearly solid skulls that had no openings for the attachment of jaw muscles. These Captorhinomorphs were eventually succeeded by reptiles with more advanced skulls and stronger jaws for biting and chewing food. End quote. So, my shrink-wrapped business goose, we have come a long way, and the story of where our tip-top shaped bodies came from is still being written. So watch this space and hydrate. You look great. After the break, we love a good hole around these parts, and boy howdy, we're about to dive into 21. Yes, 21 black holes that reveal the very early universe did not follow the rules and expectations of it as we know today. Rebellious holes. Next. So please, stay tuned.
Wherever there are rules, there is someone going astray. Sex, sleaze, and shady power moves. It's a story as old as time. I'm Kiki Anderson. As a comedian and former journalist, not a lot surprises me anymore. But as we stumble through a doomed world and a digital hellscape, it can drive you crazy trying to make sense of what is and isn't kosher. On Indecent, I'm peeling at the wallpaper of polite society to understand the why and the who behind our taboos. Come along for the ride as I explore everything from porn to politics, tech, and religion.
If you can't get through the day without, rubbing one out in the bathroom stall at the office, you got a problem.
There's a big community around people trying to trade tips and tricks on how to suck your own and just many different pages of threads about this. And then people kind of create friendships through this.
Subscribe, rate, and review Indecent with Kiki Anderson on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also go to ncpodcast.com/indecent to learn more. Indecent with Kiki Anderson, where NSFW meets LMAO.
My friends, flock, business geese, I need to tell you about the show Plodding Through the Presidents. This incredible podcast takes irreverent dives into lesser-known stories of the early presidents of the United States, its founders, and their families. If you want the tea and the real reason Alexander Hamilton and John Adams hated each other so much, to the truth behind Ben Franklin's naughty reputation, Plodding Through the Presidents is for you. This show digs into the myths, mysteries, scandals, romance, and rivalries of the men and women who shaped America. Join husband and wife Howard and Jess Dory as history blogger Howard brings deeply researched narrative stories to Jess, who hasn't heard the stories before. The history is rich and the reactions are just delightful. So please, check out Plodding Through the Presidents at plodpod.com. That's PLODPOD.com for links to your favorite podcast app and to dive into their past bingeable seasons. That's plodpod.com. Check it out.
Hey there, podcast listeners. Are you looking for a fresh podcast that dives into the realms of scientific wonders, shares unique career advice, and where you can learn about the stories of guests who made real scientific discoveries possible?
Then join us at Keep It Science as we aim to unravel mysteries, spark inspiration, and much more. We're all about bringing science closer to you.
We are your co-hosts, Dr. Elizabeth Kugler and
Dr. Nick Gaunt. So keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep it science. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, or wherever you're listening to this from.
bye.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
When Johann Rall received the letter on Christmas Day 1776, he put it away to read later. Maybe he thought it was a season's greeting and wanted to save it for the fireside. But what it actually was a warning, delivered to the Hessian colonel, letting him know that General George Washington was crossing the Delaware and would soon attack his forces. The next day, when Rall lost the Battle of Trenton and died from 2 colonial Boxing Day musket balls, the letter was found, unopened, in his vest pocket. As someone with 15,000 unread emails in his inbox, I feel like there's a lesson there. Oh well, this is The Constant, a history of getting things wrong. I'm Mark Chrysler. Every episode, we look at the bad ideas, mistakes, and accidents that misshaped our world. Find us at constantpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, if you haven't had a listen to episode 178, Let's Talk Vibes, literally, human cells have a resonant frequency, and there's more than one way to make a black hole, I'm going to ask you to pause this and have a big ol' listen to that. Once you're all caught up, you can now text your friends about a study published back in early December of 2023, which has shown at least one kind of human cell does give off a frequency. Yeah, vibes do exist. Then, in the second half of the show, you would have learned about UHZ-1, an overmassive black hole so distant, astronomers needed the combined power of NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory, the James Webb Space Telescope, and a massive cluster of galaxies in the constellation Sculptor, because it's so large it bends space, and that bending acts as a gravitational lens magnifying objects far behind it. Yeah, they needed all of those things. And then you could text your friends that this particular black hole was most likely formed from a cloud. Yes, a cloud so massive it collapsed in on itself when the universe was a wee 500 million years old. Just a baby. Its discovery gave rise to a new type of celestial object, what astronomers call overmassive black hole galaxies. In sum, these are black holes which grew too large, too fast, essentially violating the well-established proportions between the mass of a galaxy and the mass of its central black hole as we know it today. It makes no fucking sense. I'll get to it. Now, at the time, UHZ-1 was the first and only known overmassive black hole. This has changed, and it turns out the early, very early universe was probably filled with these fuckers. So, what does it all mean? Let's get into it. Let's start with today's modern, air quotes, mature galaxies like our Milky Way. Now, in these galaxies, the total mass of stars vastly outweighs the mass of the big black hole at the galaxy's center by like 1,000 to 1. In the distant, ancient galaxies we're about to cover, those proportions drop to 100 or 10 to 1, or even 1 to 1. Yes, this means there's a black hole out there equal to the combined mass of its galaxy's stars. Are you freaking out? Well, I am, and we have Fabio Picciucci, a Clay Fellow at the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard and Smithsonian, to thank. Oh, and of course the James Webb Telescope. Thanks to the Picciucci, his team, and the JW, we know of at least 21 galaxies with overmassive black holes in their creamy center, located about 12 to 13 billion light years away, which means they were birthed into existence shortly after the Big Bang 14 billion years ago. And my friends, these were big babies. Quote, overall, we see that black holes in the young galaxies observed by the JWST are about 10 to 100 times more massive than the scaling relation in the local universe predicts. The ratio of stellar mass to black hole mass in the early galaxies was much lower than more than a dozen billion years ago compared to now. The results has important implications for the study of the first population of black holes, said Xiaohui Fan, a professor at the University of Arizona and co-author of the study, to phys.org. That's phys.org. So, what the fuck are these implications? You may be asking. Well, great question. I'm so glad you're here. Very long story short, black holes have life cycles, and we may have just figured out the few ways they're born and how they settle into themselves over time. According to phys.org, astronomers have sketched out two main pathways: light or heavy seeds. Light black hole seeds would have been relatively low in mass, about 100 to 1,000 times our sun's mass. Yes, that's considered light. And these light seeds would have formed from the remnants of the universe's very first colossal stars. But, and big but here, quote, at the other end, heavy black hole seeds would have started out around 10,000 to 100,000 solar masses. Such hefty seeds theoretically arose from the direct gravitational collapse of titanic gas clouds. How galaxies then took shape and co-evolved around these primeval black hole seeds remains a wide-open astrophysical question. Did black holes grow mostly via pulling in gas or via mergers with other black holes? And did the stellar mass buildup mostly within the galaxy or merging with other galaxies? End quote. My curious business goose, these questions have yet to be answered, and it's very possible it's a little from column A and a little from column B. Thanks to UHZ1 and these 21 other overmassive black holes, we do know that over time, the ratio of stellar to black hole mass progressively catches up to the local 1,000 to 1 ratio of the modern universe. The Pachooch told Phys.org, this may happen as the black hole and its host galactic system evolve together, merging with other galaxies and forming legions of stars. End quote. So, after being birthed from a fucking chaotic cloud, a massive black hole and its stars sort out their shit over time and become balanced. It's inspirational. Oh, by the way, I'm going to leave you with this mic drop. As reported by Will Sullivan of Smithsonian Magazine. This was on January 19th. The James Webb Telescope has detected the earliest known black hole so far. It's located more than 13 billion light years away and dates to a wee 400 million years after the Big Bang. The black hole lies at the center of a galaxy called GN-Z11, which, at the time of its discovery in 2016, was the oldest galaxy ever spotted. And yes, it is also very massive for its size, and for being around so early in the universe, it's roughly 1.6 million times as massive as our sun. That is an old, big hole. So thank you for rating, listening, subscribing, telling your friends about old skin, and ask them if they ever think about their skin. Yeah, see what they say. And then tell them about the overmassive black holes, so far away and so old, and it's just so hard to understand. But they're there right now. And an overmassive-sized hug to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you will love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.